Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Cummings. I'm with Stratus Admissions. Welcome to episode 5, which is the last in a series called Finding the Right MBA Program, which has been a collaboration between Stratus Admissions and the GMAT Club. A quick recap. The first episode talked about MBA rankings as a logical first step for looking to put your school list together. The second program discussed how many dream schools versus safe or target schools should you apply to. The third episode talked about finding programs that align with your career goals. The fourth program talked about choosing the best business school by MBA specialization. And I'm going to talk today about location and financial considerations, determining what total cost and ROI for programs are. You can find links to all these programs in the description of this video, and we encourage you to look back if you missed any of them. So again, today I'm going to talk about how important location is and how to determine the overall financial cost and ROI of a program. Spoiler alert, and maybe the bad news is, there we go. Going to go back a slide. Sorry about that. So spoiler alert, and a little of the bad news is there's no magic formula on any of those or location and financial consideration that you can plug your numbers into and come up with your dream school list. The great news is, and what we're going to talk about today, is there are many factors that you can consider. Look back at the 4 episodes prior, and today's episode will give you some really concrete, solid tools that you can use. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a list of things you can look at and consider when you're looking at location and total cost of programs. The topics we'll cover today: if and why location matters, and we'll go into these in depth in a minute, but just to give you an overview: the industry and employment opportunities, cost of living, networking opportunities, and alumni presence in a particular area. I've added in, we weren't asked to talk about this, but do you like the location and lifestyle of the schools you're looking at? Then we'll move into how to assess the total cost of attendance, how to calculate the return on investment or ROI, the salary versus debt number. Then we'll talk about the availability of scholarships and loan options. And finally, I'll touch on part-time work opportunities in an MBA program. So moving on to if and why location matters. I'm guessing all of you are either renters or owners. You maybe are renting an apartment or renting a condominium. If you've ever looked at real estate in the US anyway, real estate agents always talk about location, location, location. For whatever reason, they always talk about it in threes. So I'm going to talk about why location matters in 3 buckets. The first 2 are career related. Where is the school located? Is it located near an industry and employment opportunities that are interesting to you? Why is that something you might want to consider? Certainly, if you're looking to have perhaps a term time internship, you'll have easier access to that. That's something that is important to some students. The second location issue that's career related are networking opportunities and alumni presence. They're related certainly to the other one, but for example, if you're looking for, you want to have coffee chats, you want to have informational interviews, having that network and that alumni presence in the area could potentially be important. So things to think about: if you're interested in banking, for example, perhaps you want to be in a banking center. That might be Chicago Booth, or it could be Kellogg in Chicago, or it could be Columbia or NYU in New York City. You have access to networks, you have access to alumni, you have access to industry opportunities. Alternatively, if you're interested maybe in healthcare, you may want to consider a program in the Boston area, whether that's Harvard or it could be Sloan, it could be Babson, BC, BU, one of those programs if that's important to you. I worked with a client several years ago who was very interested in energy, particularly in the oil and gas industry. He had a couple of really nice offers and decided to take the offer that he got from UT McCombs because that was in the heart of oil country and it worked out really well for him. So that's a consideration that you might want to think about. The third consideration in the location is cost of living. And in this number, I'm just looking at the average monthly rent of a 2-bedroom apartment. Obviously, average is the important thing here. If you look at the far left number, that's the cost of living in South Bend, Indiana, which is where Mendoza, a terrific program, is. The average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment there is a little over $1,000. On the far end of the spectrum, on the far right, is New York, New York, home of obviously NYU, Columbia. The average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment, again, average, is a little over $5,000. So the cost differential between South Bend, Indiana and New York is $4,000 a month, which if you add that up over 2 years, really adds up to potentially a lot of money. So there's a cost differential there. Again, that's one factor, but something you definitely want to keep track of and consider when you're looking at your programs. I also added in if and why location matters. Will you like the lifestyle there? Are you super outdoorsy? Do you want to have access to mountains? Then you might want to consider a program like Tuck at Dartmouth. If you really want to be in a city, then maybe UCLA or Stanford are better choices for you. So again, just a couple other data points that you want to start collecting when you're trying to find the program that's right for you. I'm going to step back here and just do a quick introduction again. My name is Lisa Cummings. I am an MBA Admissions Counselor at Stratus Admissions. My early career was in New York City on Wall Street. I was a buy and sell side equity analyst. I worked in private equity. After that, I spent 14 years on the admissions committee at MIT Sloan. And while I was there, I read thousands of applications. I interviewed thousands of candidates. So I have a really good insider knowledge into what schools are looking for. What really interested me in coming over to Stratus was the team approach that Stratus takes. When I was at Sloan, I never looked at an application in isolation. I always had someone else on my team looking at that application. If you work with Stratus on a comprehensive basis, you get that same team-based approach. You have your primary counselor, you have a strategist, you have a school-specific reviewer, you have a proofreader, and you also have a client relationship manager on your team. If you work with us on 4 schools or more in round 1, and for whatever reason you're not successful, at no additional charge, you can work with us on 2 additional schools in round 2. So we're pretty confident that our team-based approach works and our history pays that out. So jumping back into how to figure out where the best programs is and how to figure out the cost of attendance. We did talk in the earlier slide about cost of living. So cost of living being the cost of renting an apartment. So these arrows really show the different major factors that go into the equation that you will want to look at when you're determining how much is each different school going to cost, and it's different for each school. So here, the tuition is one of the biggest pieces. And on average, and again, these are all average numbers, tuition for a 2-year MBA program ranges from $70,000 a year, this is in the US, to $90,000 a year. That's a pretty broad range. The cost of living, the next piece is that lost income. What would you have been making in those 2 years that you're in school? And that has to factor into the cost of your degree. That we have, again, the average for someone who's been out of school for 3 years, the average salary in the US is about $60,000 a year. So the average cost, we've done the math, of a 2-year MBA, tuition and lost income is about $320,000. But those aren't the only other costs. Those are the main costs, and those are the things that people generally look at, but we want to make sure we highlight a couple other areas that you might want to consider. The other piece is the cost of living, aside from just the cost of renting an apartment. Cost of living means what do groceries cost in that area? What are our utilities? What do they cost in that area? And that can vary widely among and between different cities. So again, you want to get some sense of what that would be for the schools that you're looking at. A piece that we often find our clients overlook is travel. If you live in California and you want to go to INSEAD Dubai, That's amazing, but there's going to be a cost for you to travel. And that's something that you are going to want to put into your budget and into your plan when you're trying to figure out the total cost of attending that school. It may be that it's a high cost to travel, but you don't feel the need to come back to your home base often. Or maybe it's the opposite. You've got really tight friends and family, maybe a significant other, and you want to stay closer to home. Take that into consideration too. Don't forget about that. And the piece I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention is the social piece. Yes, you're going to be in business school to learn, to do classes, to get internships, but you're also going to have a social life. And what is important to you when it comes to a social life? Are you a high flyer who likes to go to clubs that maybe have expensive cover charges? Or are you kind of a kickback cover band in a dirty basement bar and happy to just do that? So those costs, again, are going to be different in each location. So think about that as well. And when you add up all those pieces in the arrow, that comes to the overall cost of any given program. And here's a slide that shows the return on investment, salary versus debt. And again, these are general numbers, but the big blue piece shows the average cost, the average starting salary and bonus from a 2-year program, graduates of 2-year programs in the US. And that is about $220,000. Again, that's salary and bonus. The average debt from people finishing school is about $131,000. So you have to see how much is that going to be for you. Now you'd have to do the math, and does that make sense for you? Is the ROI worth it? Perhaps if you started a program at a lower salary, then maybe having that large bump in salary is going to be a shorter payback for you and is going to be worth it. Maybe you're already making close to that every year. It still may be worth it because sometimes you need an MBA. That's sort of the magic letters that you need to open doors. And if that's the case, as MasterCard says, it's the MBA could be priceless for you. It may help you open those doors that you may not have had access to without the degree. So again, you need to look at what are you making now? And what do you think? Look at what you want to do when you graduate. Schools all publish what the salaries of different industries are. Look and see if you want to be a management consultant, what do they generally make after a 2-year program versus what you're making now? If you want to be a banker, fill in the blanks, whatever it is you want to be, do the math for yourself just so that you can get an idea of what the ROI will be for you. Talking about debt, some people are very lucky. Their families can pay for their educations. Other people have worked and squirreled away money so they can pay their tuition, or they've just had really high salaries, and so they can afford to pay for everything themselves. The majority of students are not in that position, and so therefore the majority of students do end up taking on a bit of debt. And as you can see here, the average debt is $131,000. So talking about debt, salaries, how do you even think about paying for school? And this is, again, something that needs to go into your equation. Some schools offer need-based scholarships. If you don't make as much money, you don't have as many assets, you will be considered for a scholarship. Most schools offer merit scholarships, and those are really to attract their top choice candidates. And how can you tell if that might be you? So you want to look at where you fit in that school profile. Is that school a really likely school for you? Are your stats really high compared to that school stats? Then you're going to have a higher chance of getting in, but you also may have a higher chance of getting a scholarship from that school. If your stats are at the lower end, you may still get in, but it's less likely, not impossible, but less likely that you're going to get money from that school. So keep that in mind. Some schools consider all applicants for scholarships. You don't have to do anything extra, but that varies by school. Stanford has an amazing Knight-Hennessy Scholars Program. They require a separate essay at the time of initial application. So you want to keep track of these things. The Cornell Johnson School invites candidates who have applied and interviewed to then do an additional scholarship, essay for their Park Leadership Fellows program. So again, each school may have different criteria, so you want to do your research on your specific school. Additionally, many organizations out there offer scholarships targeted to specific communities or affinity groups. And I'm going to just list a few. There are many. The American India Graduate Center Mission, the Point Foundation, RAMBA, the Forte Foundation, National Black MBA Association, Pro Hispanica Foundation Scholarships. These are a few organizations that are well known for offering scholarships to MBA students. So again, you want to sort of see where you might fit in on those lists and see if you may be able to apply for scholarships through there. Additionally, some communities and ethnic groups offer scholarships for people who fall into their community or their ethnic group. So again, you really want to start doing your research so you can see if you qualify. And even if the scholarships are low, it's not a full scholarship, getting any scholarship money can help you when you're making your decision. Another way that some students try to defray the cost of being in school is part-time work. And that can be tricky, and there really aren't any hard and fast numbers that are out there of how many students actually work. When I was at Cornell Johnson, my second year, I was a teacher's assistant for an undergraduate economics class. It worked for me. It was really fun. I had other classmates who found that a little bit overwhelming. So again, part-time work can be tricky. Most schools do discourage it in the first semester just because you're getting back into the groove of being in school. You're juggling classes. You're juggling interviewing for a summer internship. So there's a lot going on. But by second semester, first year, and by second year, usually you have things pretty well balanced. Some students do choose to work off campus, but I do think that the majority who do work tend to do research for a professor or perhaps be a teacher's assistant for an undergraduate class. So those are just two ways to think about how you might want to finance or partly finance your education. So as a recap, location does matter for many reasons: cost of living, enjoyment, access to friends and family, but it really is just one of several things that you should consider. And at an average cost, again, of just tuition and lost income of $320,000, there's no right answer that fits for everyone. I can't tell you plug these in and you'll spit out the answer. If you look at all these factors, that will really help you find what works best for you. We really encourage you to seriously consider what's most important to you. Again, is it being close to friends and family? Is it being close to having that network and those opportunities? Is it being in an environment that you're happy to be in? What really works for you? What are your educational and career goals and your lifestyle? So take all of those things into consideration when you're putting together your school list. And that is the end of my prepared comments. We have a QR code there. You can scan that and you can schedule a free 30-minute one-on-one conference with myself or with one of my colleagues. You can also see a list of upcoming webinars. I'm actually having a webinar with a colleague of mine on how to choose your recommenders. That's coming up on May 27th. So we highly encourage you to scan that, see what's coming up on our schedule, and schedule a free consultation with us. So with that, I'm going to open it up to comments, and I'm encouraged to see what you have to ask. Okay. So there's an interesting question. We always have a lot of international applicants on this. How would you encourage an international applicant to choose the location? It's exactly the same process. You want to think, where would you like to be? What fits your lifestyle? What's the cost of attending a school in terms of tuition, in terms of cost of living, apartments, etc.? And how does that school fit into your goals? So there's really not a different criteria that we recommend that internationals do. It's just, again, how do all these pieces work best for you? 2 questions on that. Any other questions? Please feel free, don't be shy. Do you recommend traveling to the location? So I assume that question means, do you recommend doing campus visits? If it's at all possible, we always recommend that candidates look at a campus. When you look at their website, if you attend their online sessions, they all look beautiful. They're all wonderful on paper, and most of them are. But if it's possible, if you can visit the location and see, what does it really look like when I'm here? What do the students seem to be interested in? Do these seem like they're my peeps? Are they people that I want to be working with closely for the next couple of years? So absolutely, if you can visit schools, we recommend that you do. During COVID, the upside of COVID was that schools were forced to put a lot of programming online. They now have a lot of information sessions that are live, but online, where you can meet with students. You can talk to admissions officers. If you can't, for financial or work reasons, travel to a location, we definitely recommend that you do at least some online admissions events so you can get a good sense of the feel of the school. Are profiles with 3 years of work experience generally neglected by European universities, or do they take it seriously? Schools are much more interested in, both in Europe and in the United States, in what you've done in your time. 3 years is generally, if you look at the class profiles, the average work experience is 3 to 7 years, with the sweet spot being around 5. That having been said, I've worked with some amazing candidates with 3 years work experience who've gotten into some top programs. Schools are much more interested in what you've done in that time. I've worked with many people who've only worked for 3 years, but have really done a lot. They've taken on additional responsibility. They've asked for stretch projects. They've really, really had an impact in their organization. Schools would much rather see that than someone who has 5 years work experience, who's essentially been just keeping that seat warm for 5 years. They've just been plodding along, doing the basic level, and haven't really stood out. So 3 years is on the young side, both in Europe and in the US. It's not necessarily going to be a deal breaker. That's not going to be the thing that's going to get you in or keep you out of schools. But again, think about, what have you done in that 3 years? And if it makes sense for you to, maybe this is the right time for you to go for many reasons, then apply. Or if you feel like, wow, if I worked for another 1 or 2 years, maybe I'd have a better track record or more interesting track record, then wait. Again, there's no right time. There's really only a right time for you. And someone asked, how important is managerial experience? Schools know what they're getting when they look at applications. Going back to what I just said, the average work experience is 3 to 7 years. So even at 7 years, well, hopefully at 7 years, you've had some experience directly managing people. But if you haven't, or if you have less tenure, maybe you only have 3 or 4 years, there's leadership that can be shown without a title. Have you taken leadership over a particular project, or over a particular budget, or over an intern, or maybe a new hire? That's a nice way without title to show that you have leadership and therefore managerial experience without having the title and the tenure. All right, I'm guessing maybe then we will wrap up our programming. I want to thank you all again for participating today. I again want to have you just look in the details of this video and go back to those earlier 4 videos that can answer more fully some of the questions that you may have going forward. Wish you all the best of luck in the process, and thank you for joining us today.